So, I know the title says I'm ranking every Verstappen rage moment, however, to be truthful with you guys, I'm not doing that, since there's like a rage moment for every single weekend he has competed in, and ranking all of them is low-key impossible, so I'm only going to rank the ones I remember, and if I do miss out on any, make sure to let me know in the comments and the ranking can continue into the comment section. Having said that, yes, this is another tier list video, but these are fun, and you guys seem to like the last one, so here we are again. And today's theme, if you already don't know, are Max Verstappen rage moments, and what qualifies as a rage moment is simple. If he gets angry, it qualifies, and the way I will rank them is simple. The more angry, the more higher on the tier list it will be. Also again, there are way too many to choose from, so I'm choosing the ones that I can remember from the top of my head, so I will undoubtedly miss a few. So enough yapping, and let us rank every Max Verstappen rage moment from angriest to calmest. But before we rank, let us set up the tier list, and there will be 5 tiers, and starting from the bottom, we have the mad tier, the pissed off tier, the rage quit tier, the exploding tier, and then the crash out tier. So let us start in chronological order from his time in F1, and we start with moments from 2015, and we first have nothing. I genuinely can't remember anything from 2015. I even googled moments and there was never a moment where he was genuinely mad. Sure, there is Monaco 2015, but he really wasn't mad, he just crashed, so nothing for here. 2016 time, and I can only think of one, which is in Mexico, where he was having a proper scrap with Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo, and the driving was interesting to say the least. However, there was a moment where Seb lost his position to Danny because of Max's defending, which absolutely ticked him off, and he started blasting on the radio, and at the end of the race, he showed Max his finger of disappointment, and Max would be penalized for his driving and was taken off the podium, and in the interviews, he called Seb childish. At least Seb got penalized too later. However, this was a rage moment more to Seb, since he was the one who raged more, but Max was pretty angry. So in my opinion, this fits right into the mad tier, since again, Max was angry, but not that angry. We move to 2017, and again, I can only think of one, and that being in Coda, where he was racing hard again, this time with Kimi, and on the final lap, he does a great move at the Turkey-inspired turn, however, he was off track, and got penalized, and when Kimi went to the cooldown room to take his place back, Max very sarcastically left the room. Again, this is not that bad, since he did break the rules, but he was still angry regardless. So again, a light mad tier for this one. Now, we get really juicy with 2018, since he did have a couple moments, such as in Austria in Quali, where the plan was for Danny Rick to give Max a tow. However, Danny refused to do so, and when Max went to question it, GP basically said to overtake him. However, Max wanted the tow, so he stayed behind him. Context is needed though, since the previous weekend, Max gave a tow to Danny, and the opposite was planned for Austria, so in a sense, I get why he was angry, since Danny basically broke the deal. So for this one, I would say pissed off, just because he was pretty mad, but I do think it's understandable. And now we have Brazil. And if you watched the best worst moments video, you would have seen this one there as well. However, in case you don't know, Esteban Ocon had super soft tires and was lapping faster than Max, who was the car ahead, because he lapped him. So when Ocon wanted to unlap himself, Max, who has no obligation to move out the way for a lapped car, had a crash with Ocon, and he was very, very angry, since he was leading and was probably going to win. However, after Ocon's terrorism, that was impossible, so when he saw him in the weighing room, he shoved him and called him a pussy later on as well. So I think crash out is fitting, since he did something so incredibly stupid after high amounts of stress, which is the urban definition of crash out, by the way. So again, crash out tier. 2019 time, and surely I have amnesia, right? I cannot think of a single one, since sure, maybe Austria, but he wasn't mad, that was more Charles, and maybe Silverstone, but I don't remember Max being mad at Seb, and maybe Hungary, but he accepted defeat and wasn't mad, and maybe Mexico, but again, he wasn't mad, so I genuinely have zero clue. but maybe I hit my head or something, but I genuinely remember nothing from Max this season. 2020 is quite literally the opposite though, since this is his most angriest year. Every single weekend, and yes, I mean every single weekend, had at least one moment. So instead of ranking all of them, I'm just gonna put the best ones, which is still a long list. So, starting with Austria, the first race of the season, his car broke down in the race, where he proceeded to flip out, but it was the start of the year, so he was relatively chill about it, so he gets a mad tier for this one. In Hungary, however, he was being impeded by some drivers, and at the end of the lap, he called them all blind along with 2 other words that would get me demonetized. Sorry, no clips for this since FOM is still on a killing streak. So this one gets a pissed off tier since he was more riled up. At Silverstone, he gets mad at the same thing again and says literally the same thing again. And he even had the nerve to call our savior Go Tiffy a dickhead. Not cool. So again, pissed off tier. At Spain, he curses at the team for the bad strategy he was given, and trust me, this will not be the last time he does that this season. So for cursing at the team and trashing them for the bad strat, he gets our first rage quit tier. In Monza, the engine was atrocious, and guess what? He curses out the team again, since this man's was really a dog at a horse race. So he gets another rage quit tier. In Mugello, bro didn't even have a chance since the car moved 1 inch before it said it was done for the day. And to add the cherry on top, he was crashed into and told the team that's what they get for the shit show, as he put it. So this one gets our first exploding tier since he was starting to really crack. However, Russia would be calmer since he was only impeded once and called the driver who impeded him a wanker. So he gets a pissed off tier for this one purely for the creativity of calling him that. Portugal, however, he fully exploded here, since if you saw my best worst moments video again, you would know that he called Stroll 2 things after he crashed into Max, with one being Yuki's no-no word and the other being a person from Mongolia, but the slur term, in which he had to apologize to the Mongolian government for that. Generational, man. So obviously, crash out tier again. In Imola, he curses the team yet again for a bad car in quali and says no to them like a pretentious parent. So he gets a pissed off tier for this one. And finally, we round out the 2020 season with Sakir, where he fell victim to Leclerc terrorism when he was gently guided to the barrier by Charles. So they both DNF, and he was mad at Charles, and Max explained to him about the crash, as well as kicking the barrier, so he gets a rage quit placement for that one. Believe it or not, there was more I could have put, however, I think that is good enough. What a season, man. But we move to 2021 now, the Formula 1 season that is the equivalent of 9/11, so I'll explain in 9/11 terms what happened this season. But this is the year where he first became champion, and while not as bad as 2020, for sure there were still moments here and there, such as in Portugal where the planes were hijacked, and Max got mad at the team for poor execution in qualifying, but in comparison to everything else this season, not that bad. So for this one, a light mad tier is about right. The planes are en route now with Monaco, where Max fell again to Leclerc's terrorism, this time in quali, where Charles crashed and ruined Max's pole time, and he lost it. So for this one, he gets a pissed off placement. But now, the first tower is hit with Baku, where Max was leading the race and looking good to win a good one, but his tire failed and he crashed, and he proceeded to rage on the radio about it and even kick the tire. So while this is mad tier, it's upper mad tier. Now, they hit the second tower with Hungary, where the Silverstone crash happened the weekend prior, and in the press conference where the journalists were getting ready to milk the beef between Lewis and Max, Max put his foot down and cursed at the media, telling them to zip it and to get over it basically. So if this was a video on how based Max is, he would go straight to the top. But for the rage moment, he gets a pissed off tier, since I would be mad too if I suffered a heavy crash and everyone's basically saying how it was. Then, the towers fell in Monza, since we all know the legendary crash between Lewis and Max that basically happened with both teams serving them embarrassing pit stops, and when Lewis came out the pit lane, he saw Max next to him, and then they proceeded to go alongside and make the corner and have a brilliant scrap for the win. is what I wish I could say, but we all know what actually happened, and Max put all the blame on Lewis, and from then onwards, he proceeded to mock Lewis's neck pain. So this one gets a rage quit tier placement from me. In Jeddah, the Pentagon was hit since Max had the ultimate bottle in the quali, so Max with a point to prove in the race, raced with such amounts of anger that would rival that of the Hulk, and in lap something after Max overtook Lewis off track, he was told to give the position back, so he slowed down, and growing tired at Lewis just not overtaking him for some reason, he slammed on the brakes and gave Lewis damage that didn't really do anything for some reason, and then proceeded to still race with fire in his eyes until the end of the race, and even on the podium, he just left immediately. So this is a solid crash out tier in my opinion. What an amazing season, man. I wish I could experience all of it again. 2022 time, and with new regs, Max seemingly found inner peace since he did not rage often this year. However, the key word is often, since he still had some moments, but in particular, 3 big moments I do want to highlight. The first being in Spain, where he kept hearing Crofty talk about the big red button, and like all of us, he grew annoyed at it, so he cursed at the team to shut him up by pressing the button a million times. For real though, his DRS button wasn't working and was spamming even punching the damn button, but it wouldn't work, so he got mad at the team for the bad DRS. So this moment was pretty funny by him, since no way a button was his biggest op, so he gets an exploding tier. The second big moment from this season was in Singapore, where Ferrari looked competitive, so Max does what he does best, and while he was on pace to set pole by a good amount, right as he was passing pit lane, GP tells him to box, and Max angrily asks now in the pits, why? And of course, spewing as many curse words as possible. And in the interviews, he was pretty critical of Red Bull since the issue was they didn't have enough fuel in the car. Nice. So this moment gets a pissed off placement since Sunday didn't really make up for it either. Finally, the third moment being in Brazil, and cue Lewis and Max crash here. And with Max now mad, he needed to move up the grid, and in fairness, he did. However, when he came up behind Checo, he was told that if he can't get ahead of Alonso, he would have to surrender the position back to Checo, and what did Max do? Everything but that, and then he defended his actions by saying, I don't wanna. So this gets an exploding placement because he disobeyed team orders again and made out with Lewis again. Now we have 2023, where he pulled off one of the best performances by a driver in a single season of Formula 1. So of course, he did not have many ragey moments. However, there are a couple that sticks out, with the first being in Baku in the sprint, where after a disappointing sprint quali, he was determined to move up the grid, but then we enter Osama bin Russell, who crashed in the side of Max at turn 2, which took a nice piece of his side pod off, which of course killed Max's race. So he confronted him about it, and George basically said, why you mad? To which Max called him a dickhead and laughed at and mocked his excuses. To be fair to Max though, his excuses were lame, and George really did crash into him due to skill issue. So for this one, he gets a pissed off tier solely because he said all those things on live TV, even with so much PR training. The next one is in Vegas, where after running Leclerc off Brazil 2021 style, he got mad when he heard the FIA gave him a penalty and said, send them my regards, and this had drastic consequences, since this may or may not have influenced the recent FIA decision to prevent teams and drivers from being critical of them. So he basically led the FIA to make a rule that said no more bullying them. Again, generational. So this one gets a high mad tier since he really wasn't that mad. Finally, the current year of 2024, and we all know the big two. In Austria, he was leading comfortably. However, the team messed up his stop, which now put professional bottler Lando Norris behind him, and at first, it was a proper scrap, and then Lando got desperate and he started sending dive bombs like 10 car lengths behind, which led to Max becoming a little desperate himself and moving on the racing line. And you put all of this in a pot and you have Lando Norris and Max Verstappen coming together. It was a crash that didn't need to happen, and Max was angry about it, but it was with his best bud Lando Norris, so he was more sad than anything else, so he gets a light mad tier. However, in Hungary, oh boy, He was driving a Red Bull tin can with wheels, and looking at his past behavior, he obviously became very mad with the team. However, instead of calming him down, GP was talking to him like a child throwing a temper tantrum, which I mean, he's not wrong, but still, and Max proceeded to drive as mad as possible and eventually crashed with good old Lewis Hamilton again. This is crash out tier obviously, since again, this is just the definition of crash out. So there is the full ranking of his rage moments. So that was my ranking of every Max Verstappen rage moment. Phew, some of these I understand why he raged, and some of these I see as him just throwing a temper tantrum, but we could give this guy as much stick as we can. However, he is still the one winning everything, so clearly something is working for him. But for real though, my favorite moment still has to be Portugal 2020, since he not only pissed off a community of people, but also an entire government, which I have to state again, generational. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe, since that would greatly help me in making better content, and let me know in the comments what your favorite moment is, and as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.